I'm here with Ryan Thiele. Ryan Thiele is monitors for
Cody Johnson.
Cody Johnson. Come on now. Let's hit the rewind button.
Sure.
And go back when you were just a wee little lad that had the twinkle in his eye for doing sound. What sparked that little twinkle in your eye?
Man, so I started out, first when I was like in middle school, I started playing piano.
Okay.
And really got into like because I would play in church a lot, did a lot of the cool sounds and stuff like that, you know, and really got into like DAWs and VSTs and stuff like that, and got into mixing with, you know, just downloaded Logic and started playing around with sounds and stuff like that. And a buddy of mine was writing his own music, and I would mix it for him, you know, and just really feel like I kind of loved mixing a lot, you know, and then started playing live a lot, and had a need for sound guy at church, you know, and had a guy that was willing to let me just hop behind the console, start twisting knobs. And not long after that, I was like, man, you know, this is something I really enjoy doing and definitely love to do for a career. I think first time I ever got to mix on like a large format line array, that was kind of like the one, you know, when I first started mixing front of house for a little band out of Texas, getting to dig into that line array, I was like, man, big PA, this is awesome, you know. So.
Mixing for church and mixing monitors is a vastly different.
Oh, absolutely.
So what got you from that side of the snake to this side of the snake?
So I got an offer from Granger Smith to be monitor engineer and stage manager. And
y'all don't know.
Yeah, shout out UD. Shout out to my boy. Yeah, dude. Fun gig, man. And it was really just like, it was a touring opportunity. You know, I wanted to tour, and I had toured regionally in Texas with a smaller band, and took about 8 months off the road doing some studio stuff. And this gig kind of came out of nowhere, you know, and it was you know, full-time touring gig and a pretty sweet deal. And man, I was like, I'm all about it, you know. So
sure.
I just kind of took whatever opportunity came first, you know, which happened to be a monitor gig. And I honestly, like, at first I was just like, I don't know, monitors, like, you know, everyone, you know, you're young and you're like, man, I don't know if I really want to do that. I want to be front of house, work with the big sound systems and stuff. But I've really grown to love the monitor position a lot, and I definitely think it's more catered towards the kind of mind that I have, you know, which is a very organizational kind of, you know, you got to keep track of a lot of stuff. You got to keep track of a lot of mixes. Talkback microphones, like I told you earlier, we have like 14 of them in our rig, you know, lots. So,
so I asked Sean this earlier, but I'm gonna ask you the same thing.
Yeah.
What's your social security and your mother's maiden name?
Oh, jeez.
No, is it easier? Do you feel it's easier to go from monitors to front of house, or from front of house to monitors?
Man, I definitely think that the front of house and monitors side, actually, I think is kind of a little bit easier, because you kind of establish, you know, the baseline for mixing. You know, taking care of one mix before you have to take care of 10 different ones, you know. I definitely think that is advantageous. But I mean, at the same time, man, I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. You can go either way. Like, I know a lot of guys that have taken monitor gigs because oftentimes those are the ones that are open first, you know, and they end up working their way into a front of house position at some point. So,
man, monitors is the only one that I feel like mixing comes secondary to relationship and communication.
Absolutely.
Whereas you could be a great engineer, but if you don't do that first, you're not going to get the gig for it.
Yeah.
You could be an okay engineer and kind of figure your way through it, as long as you can figure out that communication.
Absolutely. That's the number one name of the game, you know. I mean, chances are, like, the way that you mix a guitar may not be the way that your guitar player wants his guitar mixed.
Yeah.
You know, and you have to understand that's what he needs to give the best performance and feel comfortable on stage. And so, yeah, I mean, I definitely think that listening skill is the first thing you got to have to be a great monitor engineer, you know, and that relational aspect. Your band trusts you behind the board, you know, pushing faders for them. You know, you're going to take care of them when something goes wrong. You're going to make sure that their experience is consistent. You know, that's all personal skills, right? It's all listening, learning. Like we were talking about earlier, like stepping into a monitor role, you really need to have zero ego with it all.
Yeah.
Like, if you come in with an ego saying, I want to change things, you know, you're not going to last. I mean, I think the biggest thing is when you step into a monitor role, you really need to step in with zero ego, you know, because it's so easy, especially for young engineers, I think, to step in and say, oh, I need to come in and change all this stuff, you know, when in reality, the stuff that you're looking at changing has been working for the band more than likely, you know. And so I really do think, like, you got to come in and understand, like, you know, yes, there's always room for improvement, but you really have to take a step back and say, look, why is this working? You know, maybe this is not the way that I would approach it, but it's what the band needs, right? And so that's been a balance, you know, and, you know, I still, you know, I'm aware of that. I try to be aware of that. And I still make mistakes sometimes. Like, you know, I think this would be better. And it's like, no, this is working for the band. This is what they're comfortable with. You know, it's what's going to, when they're comfortable, they're going to give their best performance.
That's so interesting that you kind of put it that way, because like front of house, you're doing exactly what you think would be good, whereas here has nothing to do with you.
100%.
At all.
Yes.
And that would be a very sucking up your pride a little bit with that.
No, 100%. I mean, it's tough because, I mean, I've spent a lot of time, you know, looking and researching like the right way to do things, right? You go get the master classes, you go look at the YouTube videos and all the things, and you're constantly soaking in information of how to mix, and you're listening to guys that have had great success and saying, oh, they do it this way. And you have to take a step back and say, you know, that works in that scenario. In my scenario, it may not, you know, and that's tough. And it's a position of uncomfort almost. You're doing stuff that you're maybe uncomfortable with. Yeah. And you have to be okay with being in this position of being uncomfortable. You know, I think for the first few months of working a monitor gig, you're going to feel very uncomfortable because it's most likely very foreign to you. To come in and like take a page that somebody else has made, you know, and it's working, they're working well for the band or whatever, and you know, it's not your workflow. You know, it's not how you would approach mixing, but you know, you have to be a little uncomfortable. You want to be a little uncomfortable for a little bit while you're learning the band and what they need and stuff like that. You know? So stepping into a band that had an engineer before, do you recommend zero out, start from scratch, or do you recommend starting from where they left off? Man, I really do think that's a case-by-case scenario. I mean, obviously, if the last guy got fired because he was sucking it up, you might want to consider
start from scratch.
In my particular experience in this gig, I had been taking over for a guy, had been mixing him for a long time, knew him very well, but he was doing the monitor/PM role, and it was too much. It was too much workload. And so I was able to work alongside the previous engineer and find out what works. And he was coaching me along the way. Like we talked earlier, it was about a month before I took over faders with this position, because I was able to like just be a fly on the wall and watch over the shoulders and see what worked, you know. That's a blessing. I think if there's any kind of chance you can have a dialogue with the previous engineer and say, hey, when you mix them, you know, like if that relationship is there, and you can talk to him and say, hey, you know, what was working for this band? Like what worked, what didn't, you know, what do I need to know? If that dialogue is there, I think you should totally have it, you know. How has your workflow changed from when you first started to now? Is it kind of the same process, or is it totally different? Well, I mixed this band for about a month before I completely took over and rebuilt this entire rig, and built it a lot off what was happening before, but man, it's changed a lot. Like I've changed how I mix my page, you know. I won't go into crazy details at this moment, but like I've changed how I, you know, get signal from place to place, because, you know, what I walked in and how I've mixed monitors before, there's easier ways in this scenario with this band to make it happen. But let's take it back a little. Like, how has your process changed from when you first started mixing monitors to now? Is it still the same process for you, or have you totally changed? I mean, it's when I first started mixing, I didn't really understand the intricacies of a monitor mix versus a front of house mix, and some guys, you know, they want it to sound just like the record, you know. Sure. Like if it sounds just like the record in their ears, that's great, you know, and that's what you would kind of consider like more of a front of house mix. It's like a good balance of everything, you know, maybe themselves on top a little bit for monitoring purposes. Sure. But some guys, that's totally different. Like, you know, some guys want to hear a ton of the crowd ambience, you know, so you're relying a lot on room mics and stuff like that. And so I think it was really understanding all the different tools that I had available to me to provide them what they needed. And a lot of times you have more tools than you have at front of house. Like the audience mics are a huge thing for our monitor mixes, you know, just being able to throw those in there, give them a little bit of the crowd, you know, let them feel that energy out there. I mean, that's huge. So I definitely think that from when I first started mixing to here, it's really just come down to like, you know, I've learned to appreciate all the different tools I have at my disposal and how to implement those effectively to give the band what they're needing and desiring. What piece of advice would you give to monitor engineers that would immediately make their lives easier? Listen first. I think it's so easy to walk up to a console and want to start twisting knobs. And I really think that your life's going to be 10 times easier if you listen first, right? Listen to, if you're walking up to a page that's already built, listen to what's already going on. Listen to the band members and what they need, to have that dialogue with them. Like, you should be talking, I mean, aside from maybe like the backline text, you should be talking to the band more than anyone else.
Yeah.
You should be talking to your guitar player. You should be talking to your bass player more than anyone else and finding out, hey, what do you need? You know, you get to know the guys, stuff like that. And, but that listening first before you're taking action and stuff like that is going to make your life so much easier, because you can really easily dig yourself into a hole, you know, and get yourself to a place where you're just, it's so hard to come back from.
Yeah. These guys about to jump on?
It looks like they are, yes. So.
Cool. We can actually, if you want to move this somewhere else, we can move somewhere else to talk some more.
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, one fun part about tour is that it's always changing, and we always have to be adaptive. So we are now behind the stage, by the buses, and we're going to continue the conversation. Sorry for the delay with it, but it happens.
Oh, yes.
What is one piece of equipment as a monitor engineer that you cannot live without?
That is a good question. I definitely think it's very act specific, but I mean, one of the more powerful pieces of gear that I'm using right now is the Neve 5045. Like to throw that on Cody's vocal, and it just allows me to keep some of that stage volume out. The nonsense, it tightens up the stuff. I mean, with, you know, vocalists often want to have their vocal pretty loud in their mix, you know, and so with a loud vocal comes loud everything else that's around it.
Yeah.
So obviously with using like a tighter super cardioid pattern capsule helps with that, but that Neve 5045 really just allows me to kind of, you know, duck that background noise just a little bit more and help them keep focused on the other elements in their mix, you know.
Okay.
So
I saw something interesting I wanted to ask you about while we're doing some B-roll. Maybe it wasn't positioned, but one of your mics on the drums was under the cymbal, right underneath the cone for that. I've never seen one like that.
Yep.
Was that you that did that, or
so
was that?
That's actually a front of house move. So it's a ride mic, it's an under ride mic, and Sean could go into more detail about how he uses it. I actually don't. It doesn't really find its way into any of my monitor mixes. It's just something I don't really need. We get a pretty good coverage of the cymbals, but
how does he do his mix? Does he do a lot of drums?
Yeah, so it's primarily drum heavy. He likes a lot of ambient, so audience microphones. He likes to kind of have versus being more reliant on close mics, he's more reliant on overheads and stuff like that. So really getting the overheads to sound nice and clear. So we use a Audio-Technica 8022 on overheads, and it's a XY pattern, large diaphragm condenser. And what's really awesome about that is it maintains that phase relationship.
Sure.
And with as heavily as Miles relies on the overheads in his mix, that's hugely important. And so having that phase coherency, it still gives him a great stereo image. And pretty much, he has a pretty large spread out kit, and he's able to get good coverage with all of that. So, so kind of back to that underride mic. It's not something I primarily use, but it is. If front of house needs to hear a little bit more, like it's gonna run under that bell. So
yeah, it's like it's that far from the bell. I think that's fantastic.
It primarily is probably getting like when he's like kind of up on that bell and stuff like that, you know.
Sure.
But
so, what advice did you have for new monitor engineers that are first time stepping into the role? Maybe they applied for something that they were not qualified for, or they're just getting into it and their life feel they're way in over their head. Where's the starting point? I understand the relationship is key, but I mean, I think it is smart to talk to each person for them, but like, what's the first step for them you think they should do?
Buy a good pair of in-ear monitors.
Okay.
Ideally the same ones that your band's on.
Sure. What are some you recommend?
We're on Ultimate Ears, UE7s. That's what I use that's what Cody wears. Some of the bands are on UE11s. I think, either UE11s or UE7s. We got one guy on JH, so they're not on the same thing, which is kind of not the best thing in the world, but at least for my star artist, I'm able to be on the same one as him. So,
sure.
I mean, that's as far as like, if there's any one thing you're going to spend money on, I mean, a good pair of in-ears, I think is crucial. Sometimes the band pays for them for you. Sometimes you need to buy your own. It's different for every camp. I mean, invest in a good quality pair of in-ears.
Is there a certain way you set up your mix as a starting points? Do you start with one person for it, or like,
let's talk a little bit about that. So
you're going into a brand new band, zeroed out console. Step one is
so let me kind of approach it from this angle. So there are several times that I've encountered where we've gone on a fly date
Sure.
I'm on a console that I don't have a show file for, right?
Yeah.
So I've got to build monitor mixes from scratch. So what I kind of really focus on is I like to go ahead and just have faders up for everything that I know that band member is going to need.
Just unity for everything?
Probably about like -10, you know?
Okay.
Because you want to have some headroom for the stuff, like, I'll kind of preset mixes, right? So I'll go ahead and I'll maybe just drop everything at -10, and then guitar player, I know he's going to want his guitar on top, so I'll bring him up a little bit. And then as I'm line checking, I'm able to bring up gain, and I have kind of a consistent gain structure approach to where I know whenever I place gain in a certain place, that's going to translate, and I kind of create my mix with gain a little bit, you know, get a balance going with that, and then everyone already kind of has a general balance going in their mix, so it's a little bit easier for me than just kind of the traditional, like, you know, like, all right, turn up the kick drum, like, all right, who wants kick drum, you know, raise your hand,
put your finger up,
you know. Obviously, if you have worked with the band before, you know kind of what they're looking for,
sure,
you know. So, but yeah, I think it's great. Go ahead and have those mixes kind of pre-built as best you can. Panning, you know, if there's any kind of panning strategy that you have that you know works for your bands, go ahead and set pans. You know, anything you can do on the front end. I mean, even if you know, like, my vocalist likes his EQ to look like this, you know, go ahead and get it close, you know. Anything you can do on the front end, because, you know, inevitably you're going to be asked by every single band member for a whole list of changes, you know, when you're first creating a mix. You know, they're gonna be like, hey, turn this up, turn this down, do this, and, you know, one by one they start just rattling it off, and so you're kind of like, whoa, easy to get overwhelmed. If you get it super close to begin with, you know, you're gonna limit the amount of that goes on.
How much of it is like a set and forget, and how much of it you actually like riding through the show for it?
So in this camp, I am primarily focused on mixing Cody's ears. I kind of remain on that mix throughout the evening and making sure that it has the right balance. And I am kind of adjusting little balances here and there, little tweaking, you know. I know what he needs to hear. At this point, I kind of got an idea of what he needs to hear song per song. You know, for example, the song that's piano-led, he wants a little bump at the piano and stuff like that. So I'm doing moves like that.
Is it by snapshot, or are you...
So I'm doing Cody's stuff all manually.
Oh, wow.
I'm just writing it all myself, because he doesn't ask for any crazy, like, bunches of changes. As far as, like, I need to make 30 changes on, you know, a song. However, I do use snapshots to adjust band mixes, right? And so the bands, I'm adjusting levels per song. Like, sometimes they want a little bit more click or whatever, you know. Sometimes you know, I'm unmuting some things with snapshots. Maybe adjusting a few EQs here and there on a song per song basis. And so, but I really try to be primarily focused on Cody and his mix, and what I think is a great takeaway from that is you really remain more engaged with the mix whenever you're kind of writing it. And so it's super, I think, super important to take a active mixing approach, you know, with monitors, which is why, like, I try to stay locked in with Cody. It helps me focus on him and his needs, you know. Ultimately, he's the one that needs to feel the most comfortable on stage, you know, when it's all said and done, because he's the one with the 17,000 eyes on him, you know.
I think what some people who don't do monitors don't understand is seeing the subtle nuances that they can do, or they're doing without even noticing it, and you can pick up on that, or if it's like pushing in your ear, taking out your ear, or putting farther away from the mic or close to the mic. So we have to be that in tune with him to be able to be like, I am going to be proactive and not reactive on that. How are you more proactive than like, what do you...
So I definitely try to listen a lot. Sometimes I feel I can hear if he's struggling a little bit vocally. Sometimes if he's feeling a little hoarse, a little sick, that might be an EQ change. You know, maybe a little bit of low mid needs to be cut out. It's raspy, like, kind of, you know, that voice isn't just all there. You know, that happens. You know, these guys are singing, you know, 2-3 shows in a row. You know, sending it all out every night like Cody does. I mean, that happens. You know? So that's definitely something. You know, if you watch me on, like, some of our arena shows. You'll see me start looking up at the screens, you know, because I will be watching. Sometimes he'll pop an ear out, and I know, okay, he's got an ear out, you know, and he's on the thrust. You know, there's a PA that's, you know, 60 feet away. That's 60 milliseconds or whatever of delay. I might need to bump that click on him a little bit, you know. In general, if he's on the thrust, I typically give him just a little bit more click track, you know, so that he has that consistent tempo, you know.
I also noticed that you guys are doing ears and wedges, which I find interesting. I feel like people either do one or the other.
Sure.
How do you balance those two? Is it for the times when he pops it out? Or
Yeah,
is
absolutely. So
is it a fail-safe, or are you actually doing? Is he feeling both?
All the above. All the above. So the approach that I take with it is I try to kind of use the wedges whenever he does pop an ear out. I don't really feel like the level of anything dropped, right? Like his vocal and in Cody's wedges, it's just his guitars and his vocal, really.
Yeah.
A little bit of kick drum to kind of give him some punch and a little bit of
attack. That's pretty tough on a thrust with 2 small monitors. You get a PA behind you.
Oh, 100%. It's a balance for sure.
Yeah.
It's a balance for sure. But yeah, it's really just kind of like whenever he does pop an ear out, he's got that, kind of coming back at him. And just, there's been times in the past where also if ears go down, I mean, if he has a wireless interference thing pop up, his ears drop out, he's comfortable enough, he can just pull it out, and he's got at least a general mix going there for him, So it's all the above, like you were talking about. It's fail safes, it's for comfortability, We also have 4 double 18-inch subwoofers on stage, just for them to feel a little bit of air moving back at them. They like to feel that energy,
Yeah.
I definitely think that kind of goes back towards like what we were talking about earlier with the, feeling the energy of the crowd and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Some band, they want to hear that CD mix in their ears, right?
Sure.
Some of them, they just want to feel the energy of the live show. And I think these guys, coming up through the bar scene, playing in small bars and,
they feed off the energy,
exactly,
I'm sure.
That energy is 100%, so.
All right, so there's a newer band that's watching this, and they want to get on ears. They can't really afford a monitor engineer, but they're really nervous to do it because, I mean, I can see why it'd be daunting because you could really damage your ears with it. What is your advice for people to ease into maybe having in-ears?
Man,
but they can't afford you.
The barrier to entry is pretty low these days. I mean, you can put together a basic little in-ear monitor rig, 16 channels or whatever, with some wireless, for a few grand, I guess, depending on how conservative you want to be. But, man, I definitely think, it's really easy these days with just throw a lot of these mixers can support, you just throw a router on, and you can mix your ears from your phone. And so I think that's the great thing. Maybe you have a buddy that's a really good engineer that you can pay him come in once, set up your little in-ear box, and then you're able to kind of make small adjustments on the road, just with your phone and stuff like that. So I think the barrier to entry for having your own in-ear monitor rig is lower than it's ever been.
Sure.
Now, I mean, you have to understand sometimes you're working with some smaller, venues that maybe they don't see that come through a lot. They're gonna be like, what the heck are you doing, But I mean, you can get I think the cheapest one on the market is probably the seismic audio split. It's you can just throw 16 channels and split them off, and being able to roll up to a show with your own monitor mixer set is marvelous. Even if it's not the greatest thing in the world, something that you're comfortable with and you're used to, that goes a long way. So.
Yeah. What is your advice to artists or bands that are looking to hire a monitor engineer? What are some qualities you think they should be looking for?
Oh, that's a great question, man. Being a people person, you can't be a reclusive monitor engineer. You got to be able to have some conversations.
I see all the reclusive monitor engineers typing right now. Just so mad.
Yeah, dude,
I could do it.
Dude, you got to be able to talk to some people. You're gonna have to have some difficult conversations a lot, so being able to navigate that. Man, someone that's reliable and consistent, that's probably, I think, one of the biggest things that you should look for is someone who's gonna bring that same level of professionalism every single day, no matter what the venue, if it's a bar, a club, a arena, a stadium, doesn't matter what the context is of the show, they're going to bring that same consistency that they bring. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that, that combination of being professional and consistent, being a people person, that's the recipe for a monitor engineer. You can be, you can be someone, maybe you don't even have that much mixing knowledge, but you're able to listen, maybe a little bit of ear for some little bit of EQ changes here and there, you can figure it out as long as, you give the band what they need. That's really what it comes down to, is giving the band and the artist what they need,
So I know first starting off going into monitors, you're really big, you're listening and you're giving the band what they need. At what point do you feel like it's okay to be able to start maybe offering suggestions or advice for day one, probably not a good idea.
100%.
Unless you're a very, very well-established one. But what's your advice for that? When's a good time to actually say, hey, can we maybe do this?
You got to feel it out, man. It's all about having that rapport with the artist. You know, they have to have that trust in you. You know, like when you've proven to them that you can give them what they need and that you have their wants and their needs is #1 priority for you. Like when you prove that to them, then they are going to be more receptive to things, right? And I think also too, they have like a little bit of a tunnel vision with things. You know, like they see their instruments, and I think that we offer a wider perspective with things, right?
Yeah.
And so whenever we have a whole picture perspective, right? And so whenever you can approach them and say, hey, this is the whole picture perspective, bring that to their attention, and say, this is how it plays in with your personal perspective, and you can shine a little bit of light on that. I think that's a great way to bring it to them, is like, hey, this is how it impacts the whole, you know, and, you know, like if it's something like if they have a microphone that they really like that's just not working for front of house, let's find a way how to use both those microphones. Pull up 2 channels instead of the one. Let's give the guitar player the microphone he wants, and let's give front of house the mic that they want. You know, like that's a great example of like, let's find the concession as well, right? Let's give the artist what they need. Chances are this artist, you know, if you're touring at a higher level, this artist has been playing for years and years and years. And they've got a lot of experience. You know, they've tried a lot of different microphones, and they found the one that maybe they're most comfortable with. You know, so I think that's the biggest thing. Is one of the biggest things is saying, hey, here's the full picture perspective. Here's how it's going to benefit front of house. Here's how it's going to benefit us on stage as other band members. You know, bringing all that to attention, but still maintaining that your wants and needs are my highest priority.
Yeah. What is the most common mistake you see new monitor engineers making?
I kind of keep going back to the same ideas, but I do think it is that kind of acting before listening, you know, trying to come in and make a bunch of changes. You know, I think that, you know, that is when I see maybe a younger engineer, and keep in mind, I'm a young engineer myself. I'm 26, you know, I mean, I've only been doing this for a few years, but I try to be very, I try to observe a lot, you know, and see, like, I like to watch other guys work and see, you know, like the videos that you put out, I like to watch that, see, I mean, I'm soaking information constantly, right? But yeah, like, I see a lot of the common mistakes I see is, you know, coming in and trying to make a bunch of changes, you know, trying to, you know, think I have the better ideas, I know what will work for this band better than they do. And then also, too, just not having the perspective of what's going on, you know, I think if you are, you know, knowing you're approaching a monitor mix that is maybe more of a utility than like something artistic, right?
Sure.
You know, it's serving a purpose of monitoring, you know, when the band member needs to hear himself clearly, you know, and be able to monitor the intricacies of their performance. And so it's maybe something that's a little bit more of a utility than something that's more artistic and trying to, you know, be musical, right? And so kind of not having that perspective when you're approaching it can lead you to make some decisions that, you know, like, this sounds really good. Well, it's not giving the artist what they need to have, you know. I really like a vocal with a lot of compression on it. Well, that artist, whenever you're compressing their vocal in their in-ear mix, it's sucking below the level of their internal head noise, and they feel like it's muffled as all get out, you know, they can't stand it, you know. So there's just having that perspective of like, you know, I love compressors that sound really good. That's great, you know, but maybe they don't need them in their monitor mix.
Sure.
You know?
A couple rapid fire questions.
Yes.
I'm the artist. I want to describe what I need. What do you do to fix it? So, for example, if I say, can you clear it up a little bit? What would you do?
It's great. So I, first of all, listen first. Does the vocal need to be brighter? Okay. Or does the guitar maybe need to be, is the guitar masking it? You know, back to your basics of EQ. Frequency masking, you know, the problem may not reside in the vocal itself. It might be in the, you know, acoustic guitar that's way too bassy, that's covering and masking. Okay, it's all muddy. I feel too closed off. Yeah. Chances are that's, I look towards reverb, I look towards audience mics, you know, something that can kind of create that space, you know, get stereo, more panning, you know, right? If you don't have a good stereo image in an in-ear mix, everything is just really closed off on top of each other, crowded. It sounds like it's, you know, that's why I recommend you don't do mono in-ear mixes. That's terrible. Can you brighten it up? definitely going to look towards the EQ move. You know, thinking about like where's the brightness in whatever, whether it be a vocal or guitar. You know, where's the brightness reside? You know, can I do some panning to maybe get something else that's bright out of the way of it? You know, stuff like that.
I'm getting this wisping sound.
Oh, that's definitely RF. Definitely got to fix that. Hope you did your scan. Yeah, there's, I mean, if you have the budget, have a backup in-ear channel on hand that you can route anybody's mix to, and then you can run that out to them, and you'll save the day. You know, they'll never stop talking about it. It's like if they have an in-ear dropout, something starts cutting out, and you bring them a new pack within, you know, a minute,
yeah, like,
and they're comfortable again, back with their same mix, dude, they're gonna sing your praises all day.
I feel no energy in my mix or my ears.
Ooh, that's a good one. I don't know that I've ever been asked that, actually. I definitely think that look towards compression. Are you over compressing? You know, are you squashing things too much? Are they not having the dynamic range that they want?
Yeah.
You know, maybe your attack times are too fast. You're squashing the transient. You need a little transient, let a little transient through. I think I would probably go towards compression first. And then, yeah, like once again, make sure that you've got, throw a little audience mics in there if they need to hear a little bit of the crowd, you know. Yeah, probably something like that.
Okay. Say your principal comes up to you, your principal artist says, it's all jacked up.
Oh.
He just goes and talks back and says, hey, it's all jacked up.
Make sure you got the right mix routed to him. Make sure he's not on the guitar player's mix. Man, that's totally a thing that might happen, you know, like, and I mean, I definitely think that it comes down to knowing your gear, knowing your mix.
Yeah.
Go back and double check yourself. I don't care how much you've already done it. Go back, double, triple, quadruple check yourself. Make sure all your gains are looking right. You know, it's super easy. You know, maybe you have a fader that's acting up in your console and it jacked a bunch of stuff up in his mix, you know, that's not right. Definitely the active mixing approach, right? If you're constantly actively mixing, just like with the front of house mix, if you're actively mixing, you're gonna hear when some stuff is up, right? You know, I would hope that if you're in that position, you'll hear that something is weird and not right, and you'll agree with us, like, yes, and then from then on out, it's like, what is it? You know, is it a level thing? Is it an EQ thing?
Yeah.
In-ears might have drivers that are blown, right? Maybe they got earwax caked up inside of them. That's a huge thing, you know. You lose all the high end in your ear mix, it's probably earwax or you got a driver that's down.
Yeah, I think it takes time to learn the process of elimination and also be able to understand, like, listen to what does their mix sound like and understand that. Real fast, we got a couple minutes. What is something that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Oh, the occlusion effect.
Explain.
So the occlusion effect is whenever a vocalist hears their it's head resonance, right? They hear their voice inside their head. So you can hear this is closing off your ears, right? When you close off your ears, you hear that low frequency in your voice that's resonating inside your head. When a vocalist has both in-ears in, it's like earplugs, right? It's closing off that sound. So they're hearing a lot more low end in their voice than maybe you are just listening to their voice through your own in-ears, you know, someone else singing. It took me a long time to realize that, way longer than I wish that I'd love to admit, but once I realized that, everything made so much sense because vocalists were always asking me to brighten up their vocal, cut out lows, and I'm just like, it is piercing. What are you doing? Like, and that's where that kind of like, I know better than you mindset can kind of creep in. It's like, you're hearing something, man. Your hearing is damaged. It's like, no, they are hearing that low end inside there, right? So whenever you might find yourself rolling that high pass up a little bit, you know, maybe to like 350, 400 hertz sometimes to get rid of all that low mid that they're already have plenty of representation from inside their head. Yeah. So.
Well, I've now taken up probably too much of your time. If people want to follow you on social media, where can they follow you?
Ryan.Thiele, Thiele 20. That's Instagram. I don't think I've got TikTok. I'm not on the TikTok game, unfortunately.
Or do a Cody Johnson show near you. Yes. Bro, thank you so much for your time. Yes. I appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely.